yet another Luca, and today I'm going to talk about HID offensive devices. Um, who I am? Well, I'm Principal Offensive Security Engineer at Bentley Systems, and what I care most is that after this presentation today, you will understand that flash drives are not the only threat within the ICS world. You will be even more afraid about and suspicious about USB devices in general. And most importantly, you will learn about new tools that you can use in case you are pen testers or teamers during your engagements, or you can still use for scare CISOs, security manager, so are still good weapons in case of scaring customers or looking for budget within your company. One first fact. USB devices are still the #1 source of malware within the industrial control systems. Of course, it's like maybe for sure within the top 10 as threats in the normal corporate world, as a threat, but in the industrial control system especially is the #1. We all know from 2009, 2010 Stuxnet, how got into the Iranian plants, nuclear plants, through a USB key brought by contractors. And nowadays, despite companies, agencies like nuclear agencies, governments applied mitigations to fight against USB flash drives, we will see that it's still not enough in some cases. Here is some example of some news passing through 2013 until last year, even few days ago, appeared a new case. In this case, all these operations, like Operation Copperfield is my favorite. One employee of a ICS plant downloaded a movie and brought it inside the work during his shift, plugged it in, and boom, the malware spread. So he failed badly. A few days ago appeared a new bunch of news, a report from Kaspersky saying that 7 Eastern European banks lost tens of millions of dollars through, they said, like Hollywood-style hacks. Actually, it was like that, like Mr. Robot thing. So the attackers plugged USB keys, not flash drives, but USB keys, thumb drives, like rubber duckies, Raspberry Pis, Bash Bunny. So through those kind of devices, they breached inside the corporate network of the banks, and then, of course, they spread laterally and so on in order to achieve their goal, steal money. So one common misconception that is still brought around by security awareness trainings is that, and here I'm here to confute it, is that USB devices are not only flash drives. Okay, everyone knows that you cannot you cannot plug in your machine or into a HMI, in an industrial control system, a flash drive that you find in a parking lot, in a guest area, in a bathroom. That's one thing that all of us knows that. Some people still, like HR, other departments may still be triggered by those kind of, social engineering tricks like USB dead drops. But so far, we learned the lessons, right? Well, that's not only the only threat that can come from USB devices. As you can see there, we have plenty of USB gadgets that got either weaponized or like that lovely lighter match that is like just a cover case for a device I will show you in a second. So that's a problem. What are, in the title I mentioned offensive HID devices, HID offensive devices. HID is the acronym of Human Interface Devices. Everyone pretty much is using them, even if they don't know the acronym, are keyboards, mice, gaming controllers, tablets, and so on. Why are they interesting? Well, most of the times do not need external drivers, so are just plug and play, so you don't need to install any executable in a target machine to get them work. Usually are ignored by DLP solutions, data loss preventions. Like if you work in a bank, for example, most likely you will have a data loss prevention appliance in each of your computers that forbids you to plug a flash drive and steal data, corporate data. Because banks care about their customers. Of course, there are other companies, but banks are the main ones that use DLP solution. One thing, though, as you can see in that screenshot, made like a month ago. This is a commercial solution. Probably the vendor is here in these 2 days, but I will not mention who. So they provide the DLP solution for corporate environments. As you can see here, you can whitelist or blacklist USB devices. But if you look carefully, there is data storage, so flash drives. You can blacklist or whitelist CD, external CD, DVD readers, USB printers, FireWire, everything, but nothing, there is no mention keyboards or mice. That's why. It's interesting, because usually no one considers a keyboard or mouse as a huge threat, right? That's wrong assumption. And another thing, why are nice human interfaces devices from an offensive point of view is that are not under antivirus scope so strictly. So that's interesting. The first generation of offensive devices can be summed up in 4 devices. The first one is Teensy, created, well, it's a do-it-yourself solution, actually, because it's using known for hobbyists, electronic hobbyists, board and a software framework, either PHUKD or Kautilya. So practically, they were turning this little dongle in a USB keyboard that was typing really fast once plugged into a computer, any payload of the attacker. The most known that most likely you know also because of Mr. Robot is Rubber Ducky, commercial solution made in 2010. Sadly, the cost was still relatively high, so I was not satisfied about that. Bad USB is the outcome of research made in 2014 by German guys that practically they took existing hardware like USB keys, USB hubs, and they reversed engineered the firmware, patched it, flashed into the USB drive, for example, and then they practically turned a normal commercial flash drive into a Rubber Ducky, an injecting device, HID injecting device. The turning point is reached in 2015 when the guys from NSA Playset, so this a bunch of security researchers from United States, created Turnip School. Turnip School is important because it's the first of a kind, so it's the first known open source device that can bypass air-gapped environment. So once plug it in, creates a RF, so radio frequency channel, which is used to communicate back and forth between the attacker and the victim that is air-gapped. I will explain more later about the air-gap thing. Why it's also nice? Because this project, Turnip School, is the clone, 101 copy of one other project made by NSA Tau in 2008, leaked by Snowden in 2013. So it's literally copying what secret agency like NSA was doing like 10 years ago. 2018, 10 years ago. The third generation is the latest one about offensive hit devices. It can be summed up in 2 main devices, WinInjector, which I created and R&D'd last year, and PwnPy, made by my friend Marcus. And practically you can see them as a Rubber Ducky on steroid and a Bash Bunny on steroid. Why are nice? Like for example, WinInjector, instead of a normal Rubber Ducky that you need to physically plug it in every time to run the payload, you can control it remotely through Wi-Fi. So it opens a brand new way techniques, TTPs called in red teaming, so to attack a target. Of course, when I designed it, I decided to release open source and open hardware and keep it so cheap that Hack5 guys, the guys of Rubber Ducky, will hunt me down in DEF CON, and they did this year, so they were pretty pissed about that. Also, PwnPy is open source. The only expense you will have if you will try PwnPy is the 15 euro of Raspberry Pi. So it's like amazing what you can do with open source. Due to time constraints, I cannot show you a demo about PwnPy. So I suggest you to make a screenshot and see that YouTube video because it's really amazing device. For instance, the attack I showed you before last week, East European banks, 10 of millions, they used a Bash Bunny. If they would have used a PwnPy or a WinInjector, they would have been even less detectable. So that's one thing they need to improve, but we'll see. Weaponizing USB gadgets. So I said that with WinInjector, we opened just a new brand way of injecting payloads remotely through Wi-Fi, right? So now we can even weaponize USB gadgets. So imagine Imagine two scenarios. First scenario, you're a red teamer. You have access to the premises of the target, like the building. You walk around like a just simple guest, with fake suit and whatever, and you check which kind of keyboards and mice they're using. In a corporate environment, they tend to use one only brand of like Lenovo, HP, and one type only of keyboards, to simplify logistics and stuff like that. So you walk around, you see that they are using HP keyboard model A1. Then what you do, you either steal it because you are engaged. Yeah, I mean, there is a scope and rules of engagement. So you are either allowed or not to take it. If you're not allowed, just go back home, Amazon, whatever. You buy the same model. You weaponize with injector. So practically, you attach a hub inside the keyboard, and with injector, you close the case. You bring it back the day after to the target building, and quickly replace. I mean, unless you have eyes on you all the time, you will be able. I mean, I know myself, I did that, so it's possible. This is one way. So once it's plugged it in into the target machine, so you replaced the real one with the weaponized one, what will happen? The keyboard will work as usual, because there is a USB hub inside. But in the meanwhile, with injector, we either can create a Wi-Fi network, invisible, so hidden SSID, or visible, protected or not, as you want, or connect as a client, so connect to an existing network, as you prefer. The point is that creates a Wi-Fi network, let's say, and the attacker outside the building connects back to the Wi-Fi network created, and then it can inject anytime he wants, any payload he wants. We'll see later some feature with injector that will grant you ability even to spoof VID and PID. VID and PID are unique codes on each HID device, which means that HP keyboard model A will have VID1, PID1. If you change just the model of HP, it will be VID1, PID2, for example. So with injector is able to spoof these values. So we can act like an existing keyboard. Another thing we can do with weaponization of gadgets is like, imagine you don't have access to the premises of the target. Imagine that is on France, in Paris, right? And you are in Spain. You do some OSINT, gathering information about some possible targets like HR, administrator, sysadmin, whatever. Imagine that the sysadmin we saw before in an image, is a fan of beer, right? So you weaponize a USB beer fridge. You pack it inside a nice package. You add a fake brochure, or here we have the example of plasma lamp. You pack it, you ship to Paris to the target address of the company. As soon as it receives, if he's smart enough, like if he's nice enough, the brochure will think, oh, nice gadgets. How many people plug, these toys we get in conference centers or conventions? So you will plug it in, and then, of course, you need someone close in Paris to do that, to connect to the Wi-Fi network. Or if the target company has a guest Wi-Fi network shared among different branches, well, then you just configure the with injector to connect to that Wi-Fi network. The idea is that we can weaponize gadgets. Funny thing, during the Trump Kim Jong-un Singapore meeting, all the media got this funny USB fan. So the first reaction, my first reaction, and some other researcher was, is it weaponized or not? So after a few investigations, we figured out we got one, we cracked it open, and was not weaponized. But still, the feeling that it could be possible, it's still, there, we're still there. So software. The main software framework with Injector is Exploit V2. There are many features. I have no time to explain all of them. So it supports multiple OSs, Windows, OS X, Linux. You can change keyboard. We are in Spain. Usually I'm used to use English keyboard. Still, we can change keyboard language in a way that you can inject payloads within a Spanish language-enabled computer. You can change VID and PID, one of the most important things to bypass some DLP solutions. And my favorite is air gap bypass through serial. I will show you later what it means with the new hardware, because of time I cannot show you too many demos. Here is an example to show you how simple it is to spoof VID and PID. You just need to copy-paste that bunch of code, configuration file, and reflash with Arduino, and that's it. So you can spoof any. For example, in a proof of concept I made in Black Hat, I was showing like how to spoof a Apple keyboard in a way that also you can bypass. You know, if you have an Apple and you plug in a keyboard, it's asking you to press a sequence to figure out, the language. So that's it. Another software framework is US Abuse. Is practically was created to bypass air gap system in Windows. Again, I have not much time to present you that, so I put a URL of the video demo. It's really amazing software. And here comes the next one. As I said before, I mentioned weaponizing gadget and sending from Spain to Paris, right? The side effect is that then, when the victim plugs it in the plasma ball or the USB fridge, you have to be physically in Paris, or either the target has to have a guest Wi-Fi network, right? That needs to, with injector, connects to it and then calls back. So in this case, I created WeDelete. WeDelete is way more powerful. What it has? Well, they usually at Mega 32U4 as the with injector, so it's like Arduino-friendly board MCU chip that emulates keyboard and mice. This time, I wanted to add also the ability, because some people said, I need to solder, if I weaponize the keyboard, the mouse, I need also an external USB controller, so I decided to add it within the PCB. So in this case, once you get WeDelete, you just need to solder wires, which is anyone can do that. Then I replaced the ESP, so the Wi-Fi chipset, with a 2G modem. The first version is a 2G modem, so GSM. The newer version will have NB-IoT. Unfortunately, NB-IoT didn't get deployed everywhere in the world, so that's why it's still 2G. 2G is still something. In Europe, it's still a thing. In India, South Africa as well. United States started to be deprecated, but beta tester just found a new provider that provides still provide 2G connection. So pretty much all the world is still covered by it. And of course, with 2G, we have pretty much unlimited operational range. So we can physically send a weaponized gadget with WeDelete in Paris, and we can stay comfortably, sitting in our office here in Madrid. So how it works, the workflow of the command and control center. So how do you control WeDelete? So the attacker sends an SMS to WeDelete. WeDelete, of course, we assume that got inserted into the target machine, of course. Attacker sends an SMS, like, do air gap, who am I? Imagine that the target machine is air gap, so no connection whatsoever. I will talk a bit later more about it. Then WeDelete inject keystrokes fast. In this case, it's a PowerShell payload, but can be also for Linux or SX, so I covered all three of them. The victim machine execute the command, for example, who am I? Take the output, like Contoso Alice, and then exfiltrate through the serial connection of the USB. Practically, it exfiltrates it through the USB port to the WeDelete. WeDelete takes the output and sends through the SMS to the attacker. In this way, as you can see, we didn't touch any Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Ethernet network of the victim. So IDS, call it CM, Splunk, logarithm, they will not detect anything. Yeah, of course, it depends on the payload. The payload, is still a pain in the ass. Some EDR solutions, but that's another story. To bypass EDR, you need, there are some tricks. Air gap machines and versus threat actors. As you know, the concept of air gap machine is kind of a unicorn, a sort of legend. How many of you have ever seen in practice an air gapped environment? Okay, 3, 4. Okay, are you working in the ICS world? 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 out of 4 are working in the ICS world. So yeah, ICS world is still sometimes is still a thing, air gapped and fully air gapped. So what is air gap machine? It's a computer that is not connected to any network, LAN, internet, and so on. This is the most air gapped. Then there are different degrees of air gap. It's heavily secure, so heavy security physical access checks to access it. And the only way a cybercriminal can attack it is through USB port, most likely, right? So how can we attack through a USB port? So again, you need to assume that in one way or in another, with Elite or with Injector, we'll reach that USB port. So by weaponizing a keyboard, sending a plasma ball, even you as a threat actor or an insider. So that's an assumption, of course. But if it gets plugged in, okay, this is proof of concept, of course. This machine is fully air-gapped, so no Bluetooth, no Wi-Fi, no Ethernet. Actually, there is not even the power cord, so it's running out of the battery just to prove that I don't use any trick. And what I did is I connected a weaponized keyboard. So in that keyboard, inside that keyboard, there is a hub and with Elite. So now once you plug it in, turns on with Elite, connects to the mobile network operator. And then the attacker, well, in this case, I'm in front of the camera, of course, sends an SMS, like do air gap, as I explained you before with the workflow chart. Who am I? Then the SMS is sent through the mobile. First mobile network provider goes through SS7, second mobile network provider with Elite, eventually get executed. Here I slow down the payload injection to show you that something is typed. And then after a few seconds, the attacker gets exfiltrated the result of the command. Now is like a simple who am I, but imagine like, I don't know, a subset command of Mimikatz, for example. Or just exfiltrate a Wi-Fi network. You know that Wi-Fi networks are not stored in DP APIs or in any encrypted form in Windows. So just a simple PowerShell command, and you exfiltrate Wi-Fi network. So then from imagine the outside building, the attacker can get into the Wi-Fi network, for example. And here is, of course, you can execute the usual commands like calculator as usual. Since I have a GSM baseband in there, well, I added a microphone. Sometimes, especially CISOs that are not all of them technical, so the ones that are not that technical, usually they say, okay, cool, but what about CISO and CFOs? What about conversations? Because they have to hide something, right, if they ask that. So what about conversation? And then I thought, okay, let's add a microphone. So then you have a weaponized gadget, like a plasma ball that is like, or anything else that you send to the CISO, like these nice pens holders or fan, whatever. So since there is a LiPo battery inside with Elite, connected with Elite, we can even run in standalone mode. So we can weaponize a gadget that doesn't need USB and can run in autonomy a few days. So, and then we can just send an SMS to with Elite with the number of the phone that we want to be called on, and then with Elite we just call you back. So that phone number can be like connected to a computer and automatically register conversation or stuff like that. Then another thing I wanted to add, because if you are red teamers, I definitely totally suggest you to try it, is mouse jacking attacks. How many of you heard about mouse jacking attacks? 3, 4, 3. Okay, not many. Good. I mean, bad but good that you're here. So mouse jacking attack is a result of a research about vulnerable mice and keyboards. Not the Bluetooth one, but the one that have a dongle. Usually are from Amazon, Logitech, Microsoft. Most of them. Even now, I bought like a few days ago a brand new Logitech mouse from Amazon. It was vulnerable. Actually, I bought 2 of them of 2 different versions. One was vulnerable, one not. So I filed a compliant because they sold me a non-vulnerable, because I needed a 2 vulnerable. So yeah. So the idea is that with this chipset, RF chipset, we can hunt for vulnerable devices. So now imagine that I plug it in, okay, with Elite gets plugged in a air-gapped environment, so I can already attack an air-gapped environment, but then I want to attack the neighbors around, there might be someone. So what I do is I send an SMS and scan for vulnerable devices. And then, you see, I'm not only attacking through USB a target, but I'm hunting for others around. And I bet if you go back home, back to your office, start here. if you go back in your office and you try to hunt for mouse jacking vulnerable devices, you will find them. I mean, I was speaking in Blackout last week with a manager from Vodafone UK. Despite they have a policy that avoid to bring your own device, like mouse and keyboards, people is still doing bring your own vulnerable devices. So you found in just one scan one day 66 devices in the building, and you just need one to get a payload run in a target machine, and then spread laterally in a corporate network. So as proof of concept here, you can see, well, I plug it in with Elite on the same laptop because I was lazy to take 2 laptops and so on. But it can run even from the LiPo battery. So the idea is that I start the mouse jack attack. Then, as you can see there, with Elite, we'll start scanning for vulnerable devices. I'm not sure if it's visible. Yeah, okay. You see? It's scanning. This is the bug, just to show you, how it works, and otherwise you wouldn't see that. Then imagine the victim is just using the mouse, and then the packets are detected, and then the attacker injects the payload. And now the attacker from the phone, since I injected a reverse shell with persistence, the attacker just needs to open Netcat, listening on that port, and boom, we are into in the target machine. So again, with Elite in that case was plugged into the laptop to show you the debug. But in a real case, the target with the vulnerable device, vulnerable mouse would have been in another machine. So we wirelessly attack him. So as you can see, we are in. Okay, time is flowing. Another thing. I was not satisfied with all these features, so I wanted to add also radio frequency attacking capabilities. So now imagine there is a door lock or an alarm system that you can open by pressing, of course, a remote controller. And then here that you will see in the spectrum is the packet that is opening it. Of course, this is an assumption. Due to time constraint, I cannot show you how I got that binary sequence, but it's still possible to sniff the binary sequence. So the attacker, what it does, sends a SMS, and then boom, with Elite is sending the same signal. Actually, it's sending 50 times just to be sure that it reached the source. And yeah, I bypass that door lock. So it can be a radio alarm system, anything that is working pretty much and has no rolling code. Of course, the next version will have also rolling code attacks, so be careful with your cars, because usually these devices are sold in Russia for 5,000 euro. So yeah, this thing will be like 40 bucks. So I hope automotive industry will not be pissed on me about that. 2 minutes, okay. Just to conclude, never trust USB devices. If you do trust them, or if you have to plug something in your machine, do use either a USB condom, like to cut off bypass data plus and data minus cable on a USB cable, or if you really need to plug it in, try to sanitize them. There are appliances that trying to sanitize thumb drives, but the problem here, as you can see, is our HID. And there is also a solution that is open source called USG, that tries to act as a firewall, hardware firewall. And then we have here, I cannot explain because of time constraint, there are some open source tools for Linux that you can look at it. I'm not telling you to use in a corporate environment. Since it's open source, you can have an idea how it works, the mitigation, detection for these kind of devices, and as well for Windows. Yeah, that's pretty much it. 1 minute for questions, so hope there will not be many. You can catch me up later, actually.
Thank you very much, Luca, for your presentation. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
Bueno, pues ahora haremos otra breve pausa antes de continuar con la siguiente ponencia. Muchas gracias.